Hello students, this is Leah Hepburn, and this video is an audio lecture on the highlights of Chapter 14 called Argumentation. And most of the chapter discusses argumentation and logical ways of presenting your different kinds of arguments. It discusses deductive arguments, inductive arguments, Rogerian arguments. However, much of this chapter will actually be saving for our second essay and not the first essay. So this lecture actually covers the highlights of this chapter that pertain to our first type of essay, which is the persuasive essay. So argumentation in general takes a stand supported by evidence and urges people to share the writer's perspective and insights. You, as the student, will be the writer. So you, in your essay, will be urging your audience, the people who read your essay, in this instance it's me, your instructor, so you're urging me to share your perspective and insights. Now, there is a difference between a persuasive essay and an argumentative essay. Our first essay will be persuasive. So persuasion is actually a term that refers to how a writer influences an audience to adopt a belief or follow a course of action. So both argumentative and persuasive essays convince the audience to believe the writer. However, the way that you go about convincing your audience makes it either persuasive or argumentative. So for this first essay, we definitely want our essays to be persuasive. So to persuade an audience, a writer actually relies on the various kinds of appeals. So some of you may have heard the terms pathos, logos, and ethos before. These are the three different types of persuasive appeals. So pathos, P-A-T-H-O-S, is an appeal based on emotion. And the word pathos, you can kind of see how some other words might connect to the word pathos. So sympathy, empathy, all of those things have that word path in it. So sympathy, you want to gain the sympathy of your audience. You want people to feel something about the topic you're presenting. Logos, L-O-G-O-S, is an appeal based on logic. An appeal based on logic is actually an appeal to reason. So connecting a series of statements so that they lead logically to a conclusion. And lastly, ethos, E-T-H-O-S, is an appeal based on the character reputation of the writer. So your reputation as the writer of your essay. What do you know? What's your background that makes you able to discuss your particular topic? So persuasive writing relies on the use of all three appeals. Pathos, the appeal to emotion; logos, the appeal to logic; and ethos, the appeal to credibility. Argumentation, an argumentative essay, appeals mostly to logos, so it appeals to reason. It may use other appeals as well, but the main appeal is to reason or to logos. So for your persuasive essay, you want to make sure that you're using not just logos, but also pathos and ethos. So some other vocabulary words in this chapter that are important to know for your essay are the words defend and refute. So to defend your position means to convince other people that your position is valid or acceptable. So you're basically, think of a persuasive essay as, a castle under siege. You want to make sure that you have your army in place, your cannons in place, you want walls up, you want to build a fortress, you want to make it strong, you're defending your castle. In this analogy, your point, your argument, your stand is your castle, and your evidence to support Your castle is like the fortress. It's your army, it's your cannons, it's your big wall that you build to keep out the people that oppose you. So you want to defend your position. You want to convince others of the validity. You want to win the debate. The word refute. To refute something is actually means to question it. So when you're trying to persuade other people of your position, they might have doubts. They might question what you believe. They have opposing arguments. And we call this counter argument. So your audience doesn't necessarily believe exactly what you say. They're going to have hesitations and doubts. And we call those having counter arguments. In an essay, you want to refute those counter arguments. So you want to address problems your audience might have with your own argument and make sure that you refute those problems. So point out how they might be unfair or invalid or not comprehensive. They don't completely cover all sides of the issue. Addressing the viewpoints of your opposition actually makes your position stronger because it makes you seem fair-minded, and it also allows other people to consider the way that their counter-arguments are actually invalid or unacceptable. Just a point about your thesis statement. Every essay should have a thesis statement. Persuasive essay should also have a thesis statement. But keep in mind that in an argumentative essay or in a persuasive essay, your thesis must take a stand. So in other words, it must be debatable. A good way to tell if your thesis is debatable is to come up with the antithesis or the opposite thesis statement. If it's possible to come up with an opposite thesis statement, then you have a thesis statement that is debatable. So for instance, your textbook actually has a really good example here. At the bottom of page 527, it gives an example thesis statement. Education is the best way to address the problem of increased drug use among teenagers. So to make sure that this statement is in fact debatable, we have to come up with an antithesis or the opposite thesis. So our thesis, education is the best way to address the problem of increased drug use among teenagers. The opposite of that statement would be education is not the best way to address the problem of increased drug use among teenagers. And you can imagine that some people might think that there are different ways to address the problem of increased drug use among teenagers. So maybe it's punishment rather than education, or there are other theories about this. Another example, a thesis statement might be, because immigrants have contributed much to the development of the United States, immigration quotas should be relaxed. The antithesis, or the opposite thesis of that, would be, even though immigrants have contributed much to the development of the United States, immigration quotas should not be relaxed. So, because these two thesis statements have opposites, this means that those thesis statements are in fact debatable. They take a stand, and that means that they're good thesis statements for argumentative or persuasive essays. That's it for this part of argumentation. Please see the next video to complete the presentation.